Imagine a kingdom bathed in sunshine, where a king and queen, hearts overflowing with kindness, ruled with gentle hands. Yet, their castle echoed with a silent wish, the pitter-patter of tiny feet. Then, on a night when snowflakes danced like tiny ballerinas, their wish bloomed into reality. Princess Snow White, as radiant as the winter dawn. Growing up, Snow White learned that true royalty wasn't about crowns and gowns, but about serving the people, the very lifeblood of their kingdom. Her parents instilled in her a deep sense of fairness and a tender heart, preparing her for the day she would guide their realm. But like a shadow creeping across a sunny meadow, sorrow arrived. The queen, her light extinguished by illness, left a void in the castle and in Snow White's young heart. Time, the healer, eventually brought a new presence, a woman of breathtaking beauty who captured the king's gaze. Soon wedding bells chimed, and a new queen graced the throne. However, this queen's beauty was a fragile vanity, eclipsing her concern for the kingdom and its people. She possessed a magical mirror, a crystal confidant that whispered only the truth. Day after day, she'd pose the same vain question, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all?" And when the mirror echoed back her name, her cruel heart would swell with pride. Then, the mirror revealed a looming darkness, whispers of an impending attack. The king, a brave lionheart, rode off with his army, leaving Snow White and the new queen behind. But the king never returned, and the shadow of the evil queen's rule deepened, her harshness choking the joy from the kingdom. Snow White, once a cherished princess, was relegated to the life of a forgotten servant. Years spun by, and the memory of the gentle princess faded like a forgotten dream. Under the queen's iron fist, the kingdom withered. Fear became the common tongue, and hunger gnawed at the bellies of the once contented people. One day, amidst the dust motes dancing in a forgotten corridor, Snow White, scrubbing floors, encountered a young boy named Jonathan. He wasn't there for pleasantries. His pockets were meant for pilfering. But Snow White, despite her lowly station, possessed a spirit that hadn't been dulled. She gently chided him, suggesting he seek help from the queen or the lost princess. Jonathan scoffed. "Princess? Likely a ghost story." His words struck Snow White like a shard of ice. "The princess lives," she declared, a spark of defiance in her voice, "and she yearns to help her people." Jonathan, unconvinced, left with his stolen goods, but his words had planted a seed of resolve in Snow White's heart. She decided to confront the queen, her voice trembling but firm. She spoke of the king's teachings, of sharing wealth, of the annual apple pie tradition that brought smiles to every face. The queen, her lips curling in disdain, sneered, "Those insects don't deserve such delicacies." Just then, guards dragged in Jonathan, caught red-handed for a supposed arson. "I have no house to burn," he retorted, revealing himself as the leader of a band of former royal workers, now thieves driven by desperation. The queen, enraged, ordered him thrown into the deepest dungeon. "You can't," Snow White cried, her father's wisdom echoing in her plea against undue cruelty. The queen, her fury ignited, punished Jonathan by leaving him exposed to the biting cold. Then, turning her venomous gaze to Snow White, she unleashed a torrent of harsh words. In response, a melancholic melody escaped Snow White's lips, a song woven with memories of her parents and her longing to heal her suffering kingdom. Later, finding Jonathan shivering, Snow White's compassionate heart couldn't bear it. She freed him, knowing the risk. As she fled, the queen, back at her truth-telling mirror, posed her familiar question. The mirror's reply shattered her vanity. "You are no longer the fairest." Snow White now holds that grace. Enraged and consumed by jealousy, the queen summoned her most ruthless huntsmen, demanding Snow White's death and her heart as proof. But the huntsmen saw the innocence in Snow White's eyes. The queen, however, painted a twisted picture, accusing Snow White of treachery. In the shadowy woods, as Snow White gathered apples, the huntsman found her. He couldn't bring himself to commit the heinous act. Instead, he revealed the queen's wicked plot and a cryptic hint about a secret surrounding her father. Fear lent wings to Snow White's feet as she plunged deeper into the perilous forest, facing its daunting creatures. Finally, a treacherous tree with grasping roots threatened to ensnare her. But just as danger loomed, the ground beneath her gave way, and Snow White tumbled into an unexpected sanctuary, a vibrant hidden world where gentle creatures led her to a tiny cottage. Inside, 7 miniature beds stood in a row. Exhausted and bewildered, Snow White drifted to sleep. Soon, the cottage door creaked open, and 7 dwarfs, their faces etched with the day's toil in the diamond mines, stood frozen at the sight of the sleeping giantess. Panic rippled through their ranks, all but one small, curious dwarf. Hesitantly, Snow White introduced herself. Before she could explain, the other dwarfs reappeared, brandishing their mining tools as weapons. Feeling unwelcome, Snow White began to leave. But a thought struck her. Where else could she go? She turned back and poured out her story, the evil queen, the escape, the desperate flight. The dwarfs, their initial fear melting into sympathy, introduced themselves in turn and spoke of their life mining precious gems. "My father always said the forest was a magical place," Snow White mused, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. Meanwhile, the queen's fury reached a boiling point. The huntsman's empty jewelry box revealed his betrayal. She unleashed her wrath upon him, then ordered her soldiers to hunt down Snow White. Back in the dwarf's cozy cottage, a new morning dawned for Snow White. The usual playful bickering among the dwarfs was interrupted by Snow White's gentle wisdom. She taught the smallest dwarf to whistle, chasing away his sadness. She showed them how to transform chores into shared laughter, revealing that their squabbles stemmed not from hatred, but from unspoken frustrations. A newfound harmony filled their little home. Snow White shared tales of her childhood, the love that once filled her kingdom, and the huntsman's cryptic words about her father. Could he still be alive? Perhaps the former royal robbers knew more. As the dwarfs headed to the mines, Snow White ventured into the woods in search of Jonathan and his companions. Suddenly, a hand pulled her behind a tree. It was Jonathan, her unlikely protector. She shared her hope about the king. Jonathan confirmed the rumors of his capture and vowed to help find him. As they spoke, the other robbers arrived, greeting Snow White with respect. But their reunion was short-lived. Royal soldiers appeared, their eyes fixed on Snow White. Without hesitation, Jonathan and his band stepped forward to defend her, urging her to flee. But the sheer number of soldiers overwhelmed them. Thinking quickly, Snow White released the soldiers' horses, creating chaos and buying the robbers precious time to escape. Then, scaling a high rock, she let out a piercing cry, drawing the soldiers' attention to a cleverly laid trap. Rejoining the robbers in the dense forest, they finally shook off their pursuers. Jonathan, admiring Snow White's bravery, pledged their loyalty to the king. But their respite was shattered when a stray arrow struck Jonathan as he shielded Snow White from a hidden soldier. Grief-stricken, Snow White insisted on taking Jonathan to the dwarfs, hoping one, named Doc, was a healer. But Doc's expertise lay in mining, not medicine. As Jonathan's companions argued in despair, Snow White's voice cut through the tension. "The queen wants us divided," she exclaimed, reminding them of the strength in unity. Humbled, Doc promised to do his best. After a tense wait, he emerged, his face grave. But then, a weak but alive Jonathan appeared, relief washing over the group. They celebrated their reunion, a spark of affection igniting between Snow White and Jonathan. Knowing their hideout was compromised, Jonathan and his men prepared to leave before dawn, promising to return soon to search for the king. Snow White gifted Jonathan a chain, a memento from her father, a promise of his return. But fate took a cruel turn. Jonathan was captured in a trap and dragged before the queen. He feigned ignorance of Snow White, but the chain betrayed him. Enraged, the queen imprisoned him and retreated to her potions and spells, her beautiful facade dissolving to reveal a cackling witch. She brewed a poisoned apple, its sweetness masking a deathly slumber. Meanwhile, Jonathan and the huntsmen, surprisingly allies in captivity, discovered a hidden water passage leading to the forest. The huntsman urged Jonathan to escape. Back at the dwarf's cottage, Snow White, missing her father, was about to leave when an old woman appeared, offering her a seemingly innocent locket and news of Jonathan's peril. As Snow White hesitated, the crone offered a tempting apple, whispering words of love and courage, echoing the king's wisdom. Snow White, unknowingly ensnared, took a bite. The forest creatures, sensing danger, raced to warn the dwarfs. As darkness clouded Snow White's vision, the old woman's true identity was revealed, the evil queen, her voice dripping with venomous triumph. Snow White fell into a deep, enchanted sleep. A dark storm gathered over the kingdom as the witch vanished in a puff of smoke. The heartbroken dwarfs and animals found Snow White lifeless. They laid her gently on a bed of flowers, believing her gone forever. Meanwhile, Jonathan, guided by the huntsman, emerged from the watery depths of the palace dungeon, a desperate hope driving him towards the dwarf's cottage. The sight of Snow White, still and pale, pierced his heart. Overcome with grief, he knelt and kissed her. A gasp. Snow White's eyes fluttered open. A wave of joy washed over the forest dwellers. She recounted the queen's treachery, revealing her true nature as a witch who had orchestrated the king's demise. As they spoke, a single snowflake landed on Snow White's hand. A resolve hardened within her. The time for hiding was over. She would reclaim her kingdom. News of Snow White's return spread like wildfire. Hope flickered in the eyes of her people as they gathered, a silent army behind their rightful princess. The evil queen descended, a rose in one hand, a sword in the other, proclaiming that only beauty and power deserved the throne. She incinerated the rose, declaring that only power remained. But Snow White didn't raise a sword. Instead, she evoked memories of the king's benevolent reign, of unity and justice. The soldiers, their hearts stirred, laid down their arms, pledging allegiance to Snow White. Seeing her power crumble, the queen lunged, but a well-aimed arrow knocked her blade aside. It was the smallest dwarf, his loyalty unwavering. The other dwarfs joined him, a united front against tyranny. The queen retreated to her magic mirror, her final confidant. "Mirror, mirror," she shrieked, "who is the fairest?" The mirror's reply sealed her fate. "Snow White. Her beauty lies not in appearance but in her kind heart. Your beauty never touched your soul." Enraged, the queen shattered the mirror. As the glass splintered, so did her physical form, her essence trapped within the fragmented reflections. Her power, bound to the mirror, vanished. With the evil queen vanquished, Snow White ascended the throne. Joy blossomed throughout the kingdom, a testament to her compassion and justice. And so, the tale concludes, a reminder that true beauty lies within a kind heart, and that even the darkest shadows can be banished by the light of courage and love.